When Prince William opened the door, the car was still running. It was Camilla's Bentley. No escort, no log entry, and no explanation. He found something in the glove box that was never meant to leave the archives, not without permission, and not without consequences. No one said a word. Not Camilla, not her driver, not even the royal guard watching from the edge of the courtyard, until he stepped forward and drew the line himself. Sergeant Darien Cole had to call security on the Queen Consort because the truth was too clear to ignore. Before we show you what William found in that glove box and the one thing that shut down Camilla in front of everyone, make sure you hit the bell icon to subscribe. Leave a comment below letting us know where in the world you're watching from, and get ready because this wasn't just about rules, it was about power, memory, and what she was trying to keep secret. He heard the gate first, not the one on the outside. All day long, tourists smashed through there, loud voices and cameras. This was the inner gate, and the quiet buzz that only came with permission. The kind of entry that made you wonder why no one had said anything about it. Sergeant Darien Cole was standing under the northeast archway at Windsor. He held a clipboard under one arm as rain was falling on the stones surrounding him. It was just after 2 o'clock, and it was quiet. Even the pigeons seemed to be taking a rest. Then the black Bentley pulled up, its shiny surface and crown standard on the front plate. He knew it before it got through the fence. Queen Camilla's automobile, but there was no escort, radio call, or valet waiting with an umbrella like there normally was when she arrived on time. The automobile was just gliding along in silence. Darien's eyes followed it as it moved across the damp cobblestones and turned toward the conservatory wing, which they had blocked off last month for repairs. Access is limited to family and cleared personnel, and even then only during logged hours. This wasn't one of them. The Bentley slowed down to the side entrance, and the tires hissed quietly against the stone. Before anyone could get to it, the door opened. Camilla came outside, her coat pulled tight. She had one gloved palm placed flat against something small, square, velvet, dark blue, and held near to her chest like she didn't want anyone to see it. She didn't glance at anyone, or wait for the valet, who came racing a moment later. She just walked straight to the glass door and went inside. Darien stayed where he was and watched. There was a car parked there with the engine running, the keys inside, and no driver or log. He tapped the item in his ear. Unit 4, check that you may enter. Standard 659 for the Bentley Black Crown. A brake. Then not on the rotor, Sergeant. Darien's jaw got a little tighter. He looked back at the Bentley. The windows were getting foggy. The exhaust spiraled down in the wet air. He heard something else under the sound of the engine. It's there, but faint. The fragrance of old silver, tarnished metal, and something that shouldn't have been in a car that pristine. He put down his clipboard and walked closer. The rain came back, gently and steady, and inside the car that was parked, something was waiting to be found. When Prince William got there, the fog had gotten so thick that it stuck to his coat and made the courtyard feel smaller than it was. He got out of his convoy SUV by himself and waved off his security detail with a tired gesture. He wasn't here for a ceremony. It was simply another peaceful afternoon of going through old files, the kind of work his grandma left behind in boxes with labels and inventory that were getting old. He was used to the neglected corners, the little things that people didn't see, and the silence of duty that no one else wanted. But he didn't get too far before he stopped. Is that the Bentley that Camilla drives? Still there, still running, with raindrops on the hood. William scowled and looked to the archway where Sergeant Darien Cole was standing with his hands behind his back and his eyes steady. How long has it been like that? Darien said. Over an hour, sir. The engine is still running. The keys are in. No one has touched it. William's forehead wrinkled. Where is the driver? She came by herself. That made him stop. Caligula never drove herself to Windsor. She has people to do that for her. You had to keep track of your time and logs, and you couldn't break them without a good reason. He moved gently toward the Bentley, his boots making no noise on the wet stone. It didn't feel right. Not hazardous, but incorrect. Like coming back to a room and seeing that someone had moved the furniture while you were gone. William said, "Let's turn it off. We should at least." An aide went forward and reached for the driver's side door. They heard it when it opened with a quiet click. A faint slip. Something moving around in the glove compartment. Not loud, just there. The help stopped. "Sir." William leaned in. The inside smelled warm and stale, like it had been closed for too long. And there, tucked away in the open glove box, was a leather pouch with maroon gold trim and lettering stamped on the front that William would have recognized even if he couldn't see them. A2R. Private Journals from 2022. For a while, no one said anything. Everyone stayed still. William cautiously and carefully reached in and picked up the pouch with both hands. The silk came loose. The seal was still there and not damaged, but it shouldn't have been present at all. This wasn't something to remember. This was property of the archive, sealed and limited. The crowns were the kind of object that lived behind glass in a closed area that Princess Anne was in charge of. They weren't in a glove box or a car, and no one else had them. He stood there for a long time, just holding it. The weight didn't feel right. Not the weight of the body. That was not much. But the weight of what it signified. His grandma wrote these entries in the last year of her life. Thoughts that are private. The kind you don't tell to press secretaries or prime leaders. The type you write late at night when you're alone, and the crown is off, and you're simply a woman with a pen, and someone had taken it. William stared at the helper who had opened the door. "Did you touch anything else when you opened this?" "No, sir. Only the latch." "Was it locked?" The help was unsure. "No, sir." It opened up effortlessly, as if someone had just used it. William's jaw got tight. That meant that someone had been here, on purpose, not long ago. He flipped the pouch over in his hands and saw something he hadn't seen before. A light smear in the corner. Ink that is still fresh enough to display color. This was read by someone, or they were trying to. William's fingers gripped the leather more tightly. He looked at Darien, his voice low yet fierce. "You saw her walk in?" "Yes, sir. No escort. Carried a little velvet box. She went right inside, and no one else touched the automobile. No one." William picked up the pouch, and all of a sudden it felt heavy than leather and paper. "In that case, we have an issue." He didn't yell or point fingers. He glanced at Darien with the type of clarity that comes when you know you're in the center of something you can't ignore. "Seal it up now, and let me see the proof from the archives." Darien nodded once, and tapped his comms. This was no longer a normal thing. The call came back sooner than anyone thought it would. Darien stepped a few steps behind William, and the archivist's voice came through the earpiece with a small crackle. "Yes, sir. Last Thursday, private journals from 2022 were reported missing from a locked collection. First recorded as a clerical error. An internal investigation is still going on." William let out a leisurely breath through his nostrils that expressed more than words. It wasn't put in the wrong file. "No, sir. Princess Anne and the late king's private secretary were last seen together with shared custody. No permission to remove since then." He hung up and looked at the pouch in his hands, then at the Bentley, and finally at the conservatory doors where Camilla had disappeared less than an hour ago. The glass rippled, and she was there. Camilla walked into the courtyard with the calmness that comes from being in front of cameras and being watched for years. But when she saw William next to her car with the glove box open and a pouch in his hands, something flashed across her face for a split second, and then it was gone. "You had no business getting inside my car." Her voice was strong and direct, the kind of tone that made you think she wanted an apology. William gently turned toward her. "Then you'll have to tell me why my grandmother's private journal was in your glove box." Camilla's jaw got tense. "The crew put that there to move it. I was putting it back in the archives. Someone must have gone ahead. Who gave you permission?" "I don't need permission to protect things that have been left alone." William remarked gently, "That's not protecting. That's taking away." She moved closer and spoke more softly. "William, watch your tone. You're not thinking about yourself." He didn't move. "No, Mom. I'm thinking about my grandma." Camilla's eyes got smaller. "Your granny knew how to be realistic. She would have wanted these artifacts to be kept safe, not left to gather dust in a cabinet while government workers wrangle over paperwork." William claimed she did keep them safe, but his voice was still hushed and rougher now. "She sealed them, signed the papers herself, and made it clear that Anne should keep them. Just because she's not here to stop you doesn't mean you can change her mind." Camilla's smile was small. "I'm not changing anything. I'm making sure that her legacy doesn't get lost in red tape and petty gatekeeping." William said, "You're not ensuring anything. You're taking something that isn't yours. I am her daughter-in-law, and I'm her grandchild. The difference is that I know what she really wants, since she told me." He raised the pouch a little bit. "She told Anne. She told the people who work in the archives. You were the only one she didn't tell." That hit harder than a yell. Camilla's calmness wavered for a moment before she got it back. "You're taking this personally." William said, "No. You already did that." There was a line of silence between them that seemed to be carved in stone. Then William turned a little bit toward Darien. "Write this down, Sergeant Cole. Breach of category custody. Under the watch of Crown Security, a full chain of possession review is done." Darien was already taking out his tablet. Camilla's eyes lit up. "I won't let you get palace security involved in family problems." Darien didn't look up. The Crown Security Act Section 12 says that any document with the late sovereign's cipher on it is protected. Verification is required. That doesn't change with rank. Her voice got chilly. "Are you using the law against the Queen Consort?" "No, Mom." Finally, Darien's eyes opened. "Against the breach." Camilla didn't answer for the first time since she had been in the courtyard. William glanced at her, calm, unyielding, and quiet. "Let's handle things the right way." And something in the air changed, not loudly or dramatically, but forever. Without saying a word, Camilla turned and proceeded toward the car, her heels digging into the damp stone. Her gloved hand pointed to the chauffeur, who had been standing still by the entrance to the conservatory. "Turn on the car. We're going." But Sergeant Darien Cole stepped forward before the driver could get to the door. Not rapidly, and not forcefully. Just one intentional move was all it took to put him between the Bentley and the man who was going for its handle. Darien remarked calmly to his mother, "I can't let this car leave the property until the custody issue is settled." Camilla stopped, turned around, and looked at him like he had just uttered a language she didn't know. "You can't let that happen." Darien didn't even blink. Royal security rules say that legacy material that isn't secure must stay on site until a formal examination allows it to be moved. That includes this car and the purse. Her voice got colder. "You don't remember who you are, Sergeant." "No, Mom." His tone stayed the same. "I recall the promise. It wasn't pride. It wasn't being rude. It was just the truth." It hung there between them, heavier than rain and unyielding as stone. People who worked there had started to gather around the perimeter of the courtyard. Clerks, valets, and groundskeepers. They were watching, but no one said anything. William's voice sounded from behind Darien, still calm and clear. "The glove box stays locked until security finishes taking an inventory. That car isn't moving." Camilla laughed and crossed her arms. "This is crazy. It's a mix-up about an old folder." William didn't yell. "Then you won't mind if security checks it." Her lip twisted. Not really rage, something more like dismissal. "I don't have time for silly games. This is something that affects the whole family." William stepped forward. "No, Mom. You have to trust this. That pouch didn't just walk into your glove compartment on its own." For a second, it seemed like she was about to say something harsh, something that would end it all, but the words never came. She turned to the driver instead. "Get down." The driver backed up right away. Darien stayed still. He stayed right where he was, quiet and unmoving. A wall built of wool and rules. The motor kept humming within the automobile, low, patient, and all around them. The mist got thicker. William looked at Darien once, then down at the pouch he still had in his hand. He designated the compartment as sealed until it could be fully inspected. The Queen Consort's power ended at the edge of a glove box, just like that. When the palace security reaction squad got to the courtyard, the air had gone from moist to frigid. Not the temperature, but something else. The kind of cold that comes between people when they don't trust each other and don't try to hide it. Camila was now standing behind the covered archway with only one aide on her side. Her arms were crossed, her coat was immaculate, but her expression had become flat and unreadable. Nor anger, nor fear, just the practiced blankness of someone who had made a mistake and wouldn't confess it. The lead security officer came up to William first, saluted him quickly, and then turned to the Bentley. "We'll start writing things down, sir." William moved away without saying anything. Sergeant Darien Cole stood on the other side of the car and watched as the officer opened a sealed inventory kit. Everything was by the book: gloves, a scanner, a camera, tamper tags, evidence sleeves, and everything was done slowly. The glove box was opened with care. The pouch with the Queen's cipher was the first thing to be taken out and put in order. Next was a diamond-studded brooch in the shape of a Scottish thistle, the one the Queen wore when she was last seen in public at Balmoral. Then there was the third, a small, exquisite gold locket with the royal arms on it. It was the kind of thing you hide in a drawer and never show anyone. The fourth was a small oil painting, no bigger than a postcard, that showed a young Elizabeth standing next to her father, King George V, outside the palace stables. The margins were faded. Darien's forehead wrinkled. "These weren't just things for you. They were heirlooms that weren't on the ledger, the sort you didn't move, the sort you didn't touch. The security guard stopped and looked at his tablet. There was no record of these in any inventory. Camilla moved forward. I had them to keep them safe. Princess Anne knew. William's head moved a little. He took his phone out of his coat and called. Anne, did you know that some private things were moved from Balmoral to Windsor? Thistle brooch, gold locket, little portrait. A pause, and then her voice clipped, clear and piercing as winter air. No way. There was silence. Camilla's face stayed the same, but the knuckles on her folded arms turned white. William just said thank you. He hung up the phone. He didn't pay attention to Camilla. He stared at Darien. Make the area safe. Darien came forward, took the incident sleeve off his belt, and started sealing the compartment. His fingers didn't move. His voice stayed steady. Glove box formally marked for transferring evidence. No vehicles are allowed to move. Camilla didn't say anything from the archway, but the air around her cracked like something deeper than rules had been revealed. The courtyard wasn't quiet. It was still. Still, it's the kind of silence that happens when everyone knows the line has been crossed, but no one wants to say it first. Camilla quickly moved, her coat rustling as she ran straight to the passenger door. We're finished here. The Crown should not be involved in this whole thing. I'm getting in my car and leaving before the press finds out about your little show. The driver thought for a moment, then looked at Darien and William. Everyone stayed still. Prince William didn't raise his voice or move. Sergeant Cole, follows standard containment, he replied very gently. Darien stopped for a while. Standard confinement wasn't a ceremony. It wasn't a suggestion. It was the routine for dealing with security breaches that involved locking down the perimeter and controlling assets, even for vehicles that were being used by the royal family at the time. Camilla got to the car door, even though she was a member of the royal family. Darien didn't yell or make threats. He raised one hand, Boomar, in a subtle and practiced way. Without thinking, 2 Coldstream guards nearby left their posts and moved to the side of the car. It was a quiet moment, but it was real. Her own guard had just stopped the Queen Consort. People who worked near the hallways stopped walking. A groundskeeper hid behind a pillar. The valet let go of his clipboard. The driver left completely. Darien's voice was calm, respectful, and firm. According to Royal Security Directive 7, Crown Marshal staff are now able to inspect the car and everything inside it. The area around the vehicle is sealed. Camilla glanced around, her eyes sparkling. Do you know what you're doing? Darien's voice stayed the same. Yes, ma'am. I'm keeping what's left of Her Majesty's command safe. She walked toward him, her voice shrill. You're going beyond what you have the right to do. You have to answer to the palace. He didn't give up. I answer to the king, and the seal in the glove box is older than your title. She opened her lips to say something, but then she stopped. It wasn't because she didn't have anything to say. It was because she finally understood what everyone else did. Nobody stopped him. Not him, not the workers, or even the guards next to her car. Everyone was still staring, and the stillness was louder than anything she could have spoken. She moved back, angry but outnumbered. For a minute the courtyard was still. It looked like the rain stopped too. Camilla's voice got quieter. Not softer, but sharper. The kind of silence that hurt. Sergeant, you'll be sorry for this. When everything is said and done and the paperwork is done, you'll be sent to a forgotten outpost where no one knows your name. Darien didn't flinch. It was better to be forgotten with honor than to be remembered as the man who let her memories walk away in a glove box. Camilla's jaw tightened. She looked over at the staff, valet, clerks, and groundskeepers who were all watching in silence. They weren't waiting for her to win. They were just waiting to see if she would accept what had already been decided. She quickly turned to face William. You will tell your father about this. William's answer was calm, almost kind. I know he will, and when he does, I'll show him the transfer requests, the sealed documents, and the custody logs you never filed, and I'll ask him a question that is pretty easy. Why was his mother's confidential journal in your glove box when it should have been locked away in a vault? Camila didn't say anything, since there was no answer that would have made things better. Darien didn't move or brag. He just typed in his comms. Containment is in place, and we are waiting for the Crown Marshal to arrive. William nodded once from across the courtyard. Not as a prince, but as the Queen's grandson. The line had been drawn, and this time Camilla was on the wrong side of it. The gates didn't creak, they glided. A large black Range Rover with tinted windows came out of the inner drive just past the chapel entrance. You can see the Crown Marshal's seal in the top left corner of the windshield. A second car followed it. There were no bells and whistles, just a presence that made it clear to everyone observing that this was no longer family business. The back door opened before the car came to a full stop. Anne, the princess, got out. No helpers, no entourage, just her in a field coat and walking boots, with a clipboard under one arm and gloves pulled through the strap. As she walked across the courtyard, she didn't look at anyone, not yet. Her eyes were on the Bentley, which was still running and still encircled. Camilla became rigid. "Anne," she called, her voice sounding light. What a shock. Anne didn't say anything, not right away. She halted just in front of the glove box, which was now covered in evidence tape. Her fingertips were close to the security tag, but didn't touch it. Then, at last, she spoke. "We've talked about this limit before." She didn't sound angry. It was colder than that, exhausted, and exact. Camilla cleared her throat and stood up straight. "They've gone too far. You know how these rules get out of hand. I just wanted to keep a few of the Queen's more intimate belongings safe, things I thought wouldn't get lost in the shuffle." Anne turned around slowly. The Queen didn't forget about them. That's why she put them in a box. Anne didn't stop, even though Camilla's mouth was open. "She let me take care of her private archive, which included those brooches, that journal, and everything else in that chest. You weren't allowed to touch them. They were better off with me than in a rotting file cabinet." Anne's voice sounded like a whip cracking. They were safer where she put them down. That worked. William, who was standing a few steps behind Darien, moved a little. Anne moved a little closer to Camilla, and for the first time her voice got lower. Not loud, but the kind of quiet that made you pay more attention. "Do you know what she told me? 2 weeks before her death." Camilla didn't say anything. She looked me in the eye and said, "And when I'm gone, they'll want to rewrite me. Make me softer. Make me simpler, easier to package." Anne's eyes were steady and unblinking. "Don't let them. Keep the real things sealed. The journals, the maps, the pieces that don't fit their version of me." She was sure someone would attempt. She just didn't realize it would be you. Camilla opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Anne looked at the Crown Marshal. "I want a complete review. Every item she wrote down in the last few months was compared to what she already had. I want to know where everything else is, and who had access to it." "Yes, ma'am." Anne stared at Camilla one last time. "You were asked to join this family. That didn't give you the right to change its past." Next, the Crown Marshal stepped forward. A serious, silver-haired man in his late 50s was already going over the incident log. "Written record of formal breach. Items found. The car will be taken away for a custodial evaluation." He looked at Darien. "We'll handle it from here." Darien nodded without saying anything and moved aside. Anne didn't look at Camilla again. She only looked at William. "Did you write down everything?" "Yes, I did. That's it for now. No big speeches, no threats, just a calm breaking of trust in front of the personnel." Camilla was alone now, with her arms crossed and her mouth shut. For the first time since the Queen died, she wasn't only breaking with convention. She wasn't in sync with power. The courtyard slowly emptied. The air had become cold and light by nightfall. The fog rolled down over the stones, hiding the sound of footsteps leaving. The black Bentley didn't move at all, while it was behind a velvet rope and portable stanchions. 2 Royal Marshal insignia tags, which were tamper-proof, laminated, and had silver edges, sealed the driver's side door. Finally, the engine was quiet. There were no cameras there. There were no broken headlines. But everyone who lived in Windsor Castle already knew. Sergeant Darien Cole made his last round at the far corner of the courtyard. His boots made no noise as they walked on the cobblestones. His suit was still properly squared, even though it was a long day. He walked slowly and steadily toward the Bentley, stopping just short of the front fender. The Queen's cipher, which was barely carved in gold on the pouch that was found and is now sealed away in the Crown Archive room, came back to him. E2R Private 2022. He let out a soft breath. Should never have come off the shelf. A side door opened behind him. Prince William came outside with his coat over his arm and no guards with him. He saw Darien and came up next to him, not as a royal but as someone who was quietly thankful. He replied softly, "She told me about that pouch once. She said it was where she penned things that no one else was supposed to read. These are simply thoughts, not official or for record." At first, Darien didn't say anything. Then sometimes, the only thing that is genuine is what is private. William nodded once. He stared at the car that was locked. "You did the right thing today." "Sir, I didn't do anything remarkable." "You didn't have to. That's why it was important." For a few seconds, neither man moved. The wind changed direction. A single bell rung off in the distance. Not a ceremony, just the time. William looked over to the hallway. They will ask inquiries soon. Why did a guard stop a consort? Why did she have something she wasn't supposed to have? Darien didn't move. Let them. William's lips turned. Not really a smile, but more like giving up. He nodded quickly, and then turned to leave. Not long after, the archive lock turned on. The pouch was put back in its safe, double-locked, digitally signed, and secretly added to a new chain of custody line with Darien's name on it. Later that night, information had already gotten around in the staff hallway. Not rumors. No one was brave enough to make it gossip, but the clerks did know. The people who cleaned the house knew. Even the junior valet, who had never been to the courtyard, knew somehow. A guard had barred the Queen Consort from taking the Queen's notebook with her. Someone eventually said no. A man who had been a valet for a long time, even before William was born, stopped Darien in the hallway near the staff quarters. "Sergeant." Darien stopped and turned. The valet didn't grin or nod. He just looked at him for a long time and then quietly. He didn't identify who, but she would have been proud of you today. He didn't have to. Darien nodded and kept walking after swallowing. But not from the praise, from the weight of what it signified. Something in his chest clenched. That somewhere in the quiet space between duty and remembrance, the Queen's last wish had been kept. Not by kings or queens, but by a guard who remembered what she had asked for. There would be no news stories, no disciplinary hearing, no pictures, just a record, a locked car, and a guard who hadn't broken formation, just reminded everyone what it was for. Would you have opened the glove box or just left? Should William have spoken something or stayed quiet? And if you were Sergeant Cole, would you have called security on the Queen Consort? If you think that no title is more important than the truth, tap that like button. Remember to click the bell symbol to get notifications so you never miss what truly goes on behind closed doors. And send this video to someone who still thinks the Queen's legacy was worth saving. Our other reports about the Royal Guard are already on TV. Next you can watch them, and we'll see you at the same time tomorrow, right?